to go a little wider. Prince ball, back for Marshall. The footwork. Benji Marshall. Now the speed. The footwork again. Away from Payne. Passes without looking. Away from Richards. Back to Fitzhead.
Cunning.
As good as it will say. Dances and he goes through. There we go.
Quick.
Dances Marshall. Goes straight between chalk and mud. And the hop and the step.
And most importantly, smart. These are three words used to describe Benji Marshall, a player widely regarded as the most intelligent to play the game. Even from an early age, he was already regarded as smart. But this has translated off the field as well, with Marshall making wise decisions and becoming somewhat of a leader. This is the smartest player in NRL history you have probably never heard of. Now entering his 40s, Benji Marshall applied his trade to the NRL for the better part of 14 seasons. Not many players managed to survive so long in such a competitive environment. Born on February 25, 1985 in Whakatane on New Zealand's North Island, Marshall is the oldest of three brothers. He never got to experience being raised by his biological father, but is quick to give all the praise to his foster father, Michael Doherty. With an affinity for sports from a very young age, Marshall enrolled at the Whakatane High School, where he became an instant sensation on the rugby field.
Here in New Zealand and be able to come down here more often Christmas.
Yeah, I'm loving it. It's I usually only get to come home sort of once a year at Christmas, and I've probably been home 4 times in the last sort of 5 weeks. So
An incredible few years as a junior opened up new doors, and by the time he turned 16, he was offered a scholarship at Keebra Park State High School in the Gold Coast of Queensland.
Later this year, he is a real talent, and I'm sure he's going to make an impression on today's game.
His affinity and drive to be great were already seen around the league, as he was also playing for the Nerang Roosters. This all quickly paid off when he was selected to represent the Australian schoolboys side in the same year. Thanks to these performances and his time playing in the Aussie system, he was deemed eligible for the Australian Rugby League side, but declared his allegiance to New Zealand from an early age. But things were on the up, and thanks to his impressive performances on the field, the West's Tigers were interested, signing him in 2003. His career was about to start and shock everyone. But before we continue this incredible story, make sure you're locked in and subscribe to our channel for all your rugby content.
Jerry Hill back locking the scrum. This is Marshall. He is good on his feet, and you can hear the roar from this Campbelltown crowd. Big raps from the West Tigers on Benji Marshall.
Upon making his debut for the Tigers against the Newcastle Knights, Marshall already put on an incredible display on the field. It would take another 4 rounds, and by the time the Tigers faced the Panthers, Benji scored his first try. But little more than a year into his contract, Benji was struck down in a round 4 game against the Queensland Cowboys. A horrifying dislocated shoulder shelved the future star for 4 weeks, revealing his true influence on the Tigers. With Benji missing, it felt like the Tigers' offense had simply fallen flat. Upon his return, he was moved to 5'8", giving him more creative freedom. But a few weeks later, he was once again out with the same shoulder. This time, the team opted for surgery. However, Marshall didn't rest. He was constantly studying other teams and watching games, all later paying dividends when he returned. By 2005, he had returned, and following a brief injury during his first trial match, Benji Marshall exploded during the rest of the season.
Hodgson to Marshall, stepping straight through. Will he have the pace? Will he go himself? He does a little step in mid. 2 tries in 7.5 minutes. 28 away from the...
Many of these tries were often labeled as some of the best ever seen, even earning him a call-up to the New Zealand national side for the 2005 Anzac Test. But his biggest moment of brilliance came in the grand final as the West's Tigers again took on the Queensland Cowboys.
Marshall's still going. Marshall's got Richards coming up outside. Now inside. Richards pursued. He pushes Jensen away. Pat Richards.
A brilliant flick pass to Pat Richards, who still had some work to do, would break the deadlock. It is still considered one of the greatest ever tries scored in a grand final, also ensuring that the flick pass became one of the most iconic moves whenever Marshall played. But as good as he had become, his battle with injury often derailed plans. By the end of 2005, he once again underwent surgery, returning in round 1 of the 2006 season. This was quickly cut short when he broke his cheekbone, and despite being injured, he still finished the match.
Bandawira plays on, crosses the 40, has support, perhaps this is the try. Marshall, how did he get rid of that? Benji Marshall.
He did make another comeback against the Cowboys a few weeks later, but again another shoulder injury would shelve him. This was followed by another dislocation later in the season against North Queensland, forcing fans to wait until 2007 to see him again. But this time it was about to be different. After returning to the side in round 1 of the 2007 season, Benji found himself without halfback Scott Prince. Meanwhile, fullback Brett Hodgson was also on the injury list, shifting all the team responsibility to returning Benji. The Daily Telegraph had the following to say: Marshall had to become something else. He had to become an organizer, a dictator, a tactician. This never came naturally to him, but he made himself into that type of player because he had to do it. He quickly learned almost every aspect of the game, and soon he could play virtually every position. With all this responsibility, Marshall clearly showed his intelligence, being able to quickly absorb and digest information. Despite numerous other injuries, Marshall continued playing, and by 2008 he was also nominated to captain the Kiwis for the World Cup. Despite being major underdogs, he helped New Zealand to their first ever World Cup victory, beating the Kangaroos in the final. Things continued for the 2009 season, even being named to the 5'8" position in the NRL Team of the Year. But it was his 2010 season that truly allowed things to kick off for the young star. After years of being plagued by injury, he played a whopping 34 games during the 2010 season, the most of any player. He also captained the Kiwis, but one of the biggest moments came in a match against the Titans. He kicked a mammoth 51-meter field goal, considered to be one of the longest in NRL history. As for the 2011 season, he also broke the record for the most points scored by a West Tigers player. 797 points in 151 games was incredible. And despite missing many games due to injury, the Tiger star was putting up powerful seasons. The form persisted throughout 2012, but 2013 became a bit of a frustration. A slump in form meant that the NRL star was now relegated to the bench. He would later be released from his contract and moved back to New Zealand with ambitions of a rugby union career. After signing a 2-year deal with the Blues, the anticipation was high. But Marshall found himself playing from the bench for the biggest part of the season. His move to rugby union didn't really pan out, making just 1 start and 6 appearances, and eventually being released from his contract the following year. By 2015, he was once again back in the NRL, but this time for the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Despite a shell of his former self, he steered the Dragons to their first ever final series. He finished second in the Dally M Player of the Year voting, behind Jonathan Thurston. For the next few seasons, Benji Marshall jumped ship quite often. He moved from the Dragons to the Broncos for the 2017 season, and by 2018 he was finally home, opting for a move back to West Tigers. 3 more years at the Tigers showed many flashes of brilliance, but it was clear Marshall was nowhere near the level of many youngsters climbing the ranks. He would move for a final time to the Rabbitohs for the 2021 season, having his final chance at claiming another grand final victory. Despite being 36 years of age, Benji played in 22 games in the season, where he largely contributed to the Rabbitohs making the final. In fact, he even played in the loss against Penrith, but his career was slowly coming to an end. The following year, during the 2022 Queen's Birthday and Platinum Jubilee Honours, he was appointed a Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit. The honour is one of the highest to be bestowed on any person from New Zealand, and are now in the same company as legends like Richie McCaw and Daniel Carter. But what truly captivated people around him was his incredible style of play. From a young age, even school coaches noted how quickly Marshall caught on. His flashy play might have frustrated many, but he was essentially the Carlos Spencer of rugby league. The flick pass, arguably his trademark move, has created some of the greatest tries in the history of the game. Moreover, he had a knack for reading the game. Crucial plays in dying minutes would often see teams sneak a victory in situations they should have never won. This has earned him numerous awards. By 2024, he was officially inducted in the National Rugby League Hall of Fame, being ascribed Hall of Fame number 123. But rugby was within his blood, and as many coaches under whom he played said, his intelligence would make him a great coach. Marshall returned to the Tigers in a coaching capacity. Unfortunately, his first season saw the Tigers finish with the wooden spoon, but perhaps a few years would allow him to implement his own style. There's no denying the quality of a player that Benji Marshall is. Many call him flashy, but most diehard fans understand that his keen eye and vision often lead to some of the greatest tries in the game. So is he perhaps one of the greatest players of all time? Make sure to let us know in the comments below.